We want to continue with our discussion of Bismarck and the unification of Germany, and now German diplomacy after the unification, after the creation of the German Empire. I suppose the context remains the same, the sort of long 19th century of relative peace in Europe. Significance, well, we have the establishment now of a powerful, dynamic German empire right in the heart of Europe. And this is going to have ramifications and consequences, some of them quite unforeseen. What does this new Germany want? Prussia now stood at the head of a great empire, unquestionably the strongest military power on the continent, and in due course, the strongest economic power on the continent as well. How would Prussia use that power? Would the principle of German unification be extended to the Netherlands, to Belgium, Switzerland? What would be the fate of the Germans in the Habsburg Empire to the south, the Austro-Hungarian Empire? How about those Germans who lived in the Baltic provinces of Russia, there along the east coast of the Baltic Sea, or in Scandinavia, in Finland and Sweden? Bismarck, of course, would continue to dominate the European scene until he was finally dismissed by Wilhelm II in 1890. And of course, like I said before, Bismarck was one of the few political leaders before the Great War to pursue a larger European policy as opposed to a more narrowly national or dynastic foreign policy. At the heart of Bismarck's diplomacy here, following the unification of Germany, is what's called the Three Emperors League. In 1873, Germany, Austria, and Russia, these three conservative, sort of Central and East European states, agreed to combat subversive activities in their respective countries and to consult with each other in case other powers threatened the peace of Europe. This league, which will be joined by Italy in 1873, was based on little more than mutual interest in suppressing revolution at home and preventing the formation of any hostile coalition against its members. This Three Emperors League would work as long as the interests of its conservative powers were in harmony. This Three Emperors League will begin to crack up the moment the interest of these great states begin to diverge. Now, as an instrument of international stability, the Three Emperors League proved useless when in 1875-76, in the Balkans, these small Balkan countries began to revolt against the Turkish rule, against Ottoman rule in the Balkans. All the great powers of Europe, especially Russia and Austria, had an interest in the Balkans. This is a contested area. If you look at the map, you'll see the Balkans lie between these three great empires. The Ottoman Empire, which is weakening and withdrawing from the Balkans, receding back into Turkey. Of course, the Russian Empire to the northeast, and directly north of the Balkans, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So this is a contested area. There's a vacuum opening up here. And I mentioned earlier, of course, that Serbia wanted to fill that vacuum with a great southern Slavic state. For the Russians, the Balkans represented the shortest overland route to Constantinople and to the Bosporus and Straits and to the Dardanelles. For Austria, now excluded from Germany and from Italy, remember Italy also achieved unification in the 1870s. The Balkans were the last available avenue for the extension of Habsburg influence. So let's look at the Balkans in a little more detail, because the Balkan problems will be central to the beginning of the Great War in 1914, and we can begin to see a preview of this here. Bismarck believed that Germany had little to gain and much to lose from any conflict in the Balkans. Bismarck put the strongest kind of diplomatic pressure on both Austria and Russia to arrange a peaceful partition of the Balkans. Bismarck warned both Austria and Russia that if they went to war in the Balkans, that Bismarck would do whatever is necessary to prevent either of these countries from achieving a decisive victory. The Russians took Bismarck's advice. Russia made a treaty with Austria, defining their respective spheres of influence in the Balkans. Afterwards, Russia in April 1877 went to war against the Turks, not the Austrians, but against the Turks, to ensure the final expulsion of Ottoman power from the peninsula. Russians overcame Turkish resistance, and by 1878 had imposed upon the Ottomans the Treaty of San Stefano. When I say Turkey and the Ottomans, I'm kind of using these two synonymously or interchangeably. Now, the most important provision of this Treaty of San Stefano was the creation of a large Bulgarian state, stretching from the Black Sea to the mountains of Albania, and then from Danube to the Aegean Sea. So this treaty was a blow to both the British and the French, who wanted to keep Russia out of the Mediterranean. Remember the old policies, Russia seeking over and again access to the open waters, to the Mediterranean, through the Bosporus Strait and the Dardanelles, and then the British and French desire to keep Russia bottled up and out of the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. This treaty that Russia signed with the Turks, it also violated Russia's agreement with Austria concerning the division of the Balkans between Austrian and Russian influence. So by concluding this treaty with Turkey, it impinged upon the interest of three great powers. So in this sense, it was a diplomatic mistake on the part of Russia. Only 3 days after this treaty was signed, the Austrian foreign minister issued an invitation to the European powers to attend a conference in Berlin to discuss the revision of this Treaty of San Stefano. The Russians, exhausted by their conflict with Turkey, were obligated to accept the invitation or maybe face war against a coalition of European powers. So we go to the Congress of Berlin. This lasted about a month in the summer of 1878. Probably the most brilliant assemblage of diplomats since the Congress of Vienna back in 1815. Bismarck was the head of this Congress. He dominated the meetings, the pace, the tone of the negotiations. This new Bulgarian state is now going to be divided up, part under Turkish rule, part under Russian, and a third part vulnerable to Austrian influence. The three Balkan states of Serbia, Montenegro, and Romania, hitherto part of the Turkish Empire, are recognized as completely independent. They also lost some of the territories they had earlier gained. Now, among the great powers, Austria was given a right to occupy, but not to annex, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Now, if you look at the map of the Balkans, you'll see Serbia, and you remember Serbia's ambitions to dominate this part of the world. You see that the province of Bosnia and Herzegovina are just to the west of Serbia. And you see just to the north, the empire, Austria-Hungary. So Austria-Hungary has been given an opportunity to dominate Bosnia. This is to halt Serbia's ambitions in this area. In 1908, Austria will annex Bosnia, infuriating the Serbs, and one of those steps to bringing on the Great War. Germany received no territory, but Germany was relieved of the necessity of choosing between Russia and or Austria in Eastern Europe. Again, Bismarck saw no vital German interest in the Balkans. The preservation of peace was the primary objective of Bismarck. So Bismarck skillfully sort of kept a balance in Eastern and Central Europe between Russia and Austria. Bismarck sort of played the midwife in the birth of these individual agreements among the various Balkan states. Bismarck assumed the role of the honest broker, as it's gone down in history, at this Congress of Berlin. He contributed to the prevention of a general European war as a result of these Balkan crisis. He paid a heavy price for this success. The Russians had expected Bismarck to support them in their ambitions in the Balkans. Bismarck, of course, is more interested in maintaining the balance of power and maintaining peace in the Balkans. So the Russians regarded Bismarck's diplomacy at the Congress of Berlin as the betrayal of a friend. So Russia does not emerge from the Congress of Berlin angry at its ostensible enemy, Austria, or against Great Britain, who had fought against Russia's interest. But its anger, Russian anger, is now directed towards Germany and Bismarck for what they believe to be a betrayal. Anti-German sentiment sweeps Russia, and Bismarck realizes that he faces possible hostilities now from an angry Russian state. Let's take a little break here. I know these detailed diplomatic records are exhausting. Again, you have to constantly consult the map to see what is going on here. So let's take a break and then we'll come back and we'll finish this up. Thank you.